All right, we are joined here by Nabilah Islam, who many of you may remember from a few months ago when we interviewed her when she was coming to Washington as part of her insurgent campaign for Congress in the suburbs of Atlanta at the time. Every article was referring to her as the AOC of Atlanta, and I think even the video that we ended up posting referred to her as something like that. So the primary has unfolded. Nabilah finished just a few points, I think 4 points out of the money from making it into the runoff. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so she's now back, and she's here to talk about her next project, which is itself interesting, but I think it's also important for people to understand that running for Congress can have benefits for the public and for yourself, even if you don't end up winning. Carrie Harris, who ran in Delaware and lost to Tom Carper, is now, a lobbyist on behalf of working class people. A rarity in this world. Morgan Harper, who lost to Joyce Beatty, is actually now working with an anti-monopoly group and trying to help Alex Morris knock out Richie Neal in Massachusetts. Who knows what heights await Charles Booker in his next career, where he goes next. And so, Nabilah, you kind of have an interesting background for an insurgent candidate because you weren't brand new to politics in the way that Ocasio-Cortez was. She had knocked doors for Bernie. She'd gone to Standing Rock, but she hadn't been involved in the nitty gritty of partisan politics. But you had. Can you give us a little bit of background about who you are and how you got to where you are now?
No, absolutely. So, yes, I just finished running for Congress in Georgia's 7th Congressional District. My election was on June 9th. But my background is working in politics. So I've been helping candidates get elected. Growing up in the South, especially in Georgia, I saw a deficit of a Democratic leadership, which propelled me to get involved in campaigns right out of college. So, I helped a insurgent city council member get elected, defeating a 12-year incumbent. I worked for the gubernatorial election. I actually worked for Secretary Hillary Clinton in 2016. And then I worked at the Democratic National Committee when they issued a memorandum that they were looking for more diverse staff. And so I've been trying to figure out how to help elect more people on the ground. And I've learned a lot working for these establishment organizations and candidates about how to execute successful campaigns. And this is something that I feel that is missing in the progressive space. I ran a very progressive campaign: Medicare for All, Green New Deal, and cancel student debt. Talked about issues that were relatable, affected people on the ground. But what I felt was missing was organizations that helped candidates from day one, which is why I'm launching this new initiative, the Progressive List, to help candidates early on.
Right. So even as somebody who had electoral experience on the other side, helping a candidate, what was it like for you, as a first-time candidate? What were the things that you learned that you hadn't understood before actually going through it yourself?
When you're a candidate, it's completely different than actually being a staffer. What I realized was, early money is like yeast, and yes. So bringing in those
and for people who don't know, that's actually what Emily's List stands for. That's what the Emily's List stands for. Early money is like yeast. People might not believe it. Google it. It's true. Anyway, go ahead.
I have a friend that once told me that it takes coal to run a train, and gold to run a campaign. Bringing in those early dollars are so critical because you need to be, building your staff up, whether that's your call time manager, getting a good manager, your field operation. And what ends up happening is, for a lot of progressive candidates, most progressive candidates, these dollars show up later on, typically a month, 2 months before your campaign, when it's too little too late, when you could have, these dollars would have really mattered earlier on so that you could have built your momentum, a more professional campaign to execute your message so that more people can learn about who you are. So I would say that was like a huge wake up call, and also learning that a lot of these organizations typically come in later on. which I didn't realize. And I feel like on the
And by organizations, you mean like Justice Democrats, PCCC, DFA, those kinds?
Sure. Yes.
Right.
I mean, these organizations are incredibly helpful to candidates. What I feel like is missing is, organizations that come in from day one. There shouldn't be a reason that these progressive candidates, sometimes you'll have one progressive candidate running in a district that has never talked to an organization before. Like, we should be speaking to these candidates all over the country. They should not be unattended. And learning about them and who they are, and seeing if they're serious, and if they are, giving them the tools to be successful, setting them up for success. So
yeah, what I've seen is there's kind of a chicken and egg problem that candidates have. Anybody who's just left college and is looking for a job understands that people say, well, we're looking for somebody with experience. And you say, well, I'd love to get the experience, but I can't get the experience if you don't hire me. And if I don't have the experience, then I can't get hired. And so these progressive organizations will say to a candidate, well, we're looking for certain thresholds of viability in order to get behind you. But it's very hard to hit that threshold unless you're a self-funder and you're wealthy yourself, or if you have the help of these progressive organizations. That's where the chicken and egg comes in. So how does your progressive list, how does your organization kind of try to deal with that?
So I truly believe that progressive candidates we're interesting. We're running on, we're talking about issues that actually affect our community. We're running on policies that are going to uplift our community. I believe that if we're able to get the message out from our candidates, voters are going to be compelled to vote for them. What's happening is that there's a disconnect because it takes money to communicate. So the way that we're going to come in is by helping candidates from day one, by helping them get professional staff, by helping them, connect them with donors that would be interested in uplifting these candidates. Like for me, I mean, my mom is an hourly worker. I don't come from a rich family. Typically, when you run for Congress or any type of seat, you come from a wealthier background. You have friends that can chip in $1,000, $2,100. Like learning where you can get those resources is fundamental. We are hardworking candidates. Progressive candidates are some of the hardest working people that I've ever seen, and we have to work 10 times harder. We already off the bat are the underdog because there are already organizations for the establishment that help their moderate establishment candidates, but we don't have something like that right now. So the way that the progressive list is going to operate is, are you someone that is relatable to your community? Do you look like your community? Are you going to speak truth to power and be a voice for your district? And if you are, then let's get you up and running. Let's connect you with people that believe in your vision. And there are tons of people out there that do believe in progressive candidates, and I want to bring those people together.
You said something earlier that I wanted to pick up on. It's kind of interesting about call time and about teaching people how to do call time right. For people who don't know what call time is, it's the time that a candidate literally spends on the phone calling people and asking them for money. Now, until there's a public financing system, almost every candidate is going to do that. Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders didn't do it in the presidential campaign because they could operate at a small dollar scale that absolutely nobody else can. Ocasio-Cortez did call time, Kerry Harris did call time, Morgan Harper. All of the progressive insurgents that people are excited about have all themselves done call time. Some of them are better at it than others. Ocasio-Cortez, from what I was told, was terrible at it, as you can imagine. If you don't like doing that, you're not going to be very good at it. And she doesn't have to do it anymore because she can raise so much from her small dollar army. But what did you learn about call time that you can teach insurgent donors through progressive lists, and is it necessarily corrupting, or can you go out and find, okay, who are the people that gave $1,000 to Kerry Harris? Why don't I call them and see if they're willing to do the same for me?
Yes, so I feel that, as I mentioned before, early money is like yeast, and you can teach a candidate how to do call time. I myself raised about $750,000. I made over 100,000 phone calls. A lot of cold calling. It's mind numbing. But That's what I'm not a self-funder. That's what I had to do to fund my campaign.
How much of your 750 was small dollars versus bigger, 250 and larger?
Sure, 90% was under $200.
Okay. So anyway, so go ahead. So you made 100,000 calls.
I mean, over 100,000 phone calls over the course of 15 months. And it worked though. I was able to get the money in to be able to build my staff up, to be able to send out mailers, do a robust digital program. But I feel like right now, progressive candidates all over the country are kind of struggling how to figure out how to raise money. And I feel like that's something that folks are struggling so hard with. And that's something that I really want to help candidates with, because the political establishment is already teaching their candidates how to do it. I don't see why we can't teach our candidates to do it. And don't get me wrong, like I don't like call time, and I really believe we need to get money out of politics. But until we gotta play the rules, play the game by the rules that we have right now, not the rules that we want, and beat them at their own game. And so helping these candidates get really good early on so that they can have the money and the resources to be able to communicate their message is key.
Did the timing that you were able to raise money affect your own race?
Yes. So a lot of my money came in towards the end. As we've seen this cycle, a lot of these progressive candidates catch fire towards the end. And so a lot of people will be like, oh, well, Nabilah, you raised a ton of money. I'm like, well, you got to look at when that money came in. A lot of my money came in after ballots started dropping. And so I didn't at one point have enough money to send out a mailer to 10,000 voters that had gotten their ballot. And so that was crucial. I mean, had I had enough funds to do that, folks that were filling out their ballot would have known who Nabilah Islam was on the ballot. And my opponents were doing that already. They were sending out 9, 10, 11 mail pieces. And these are some of the things that you just have to do in order to communicate with voters. I mean, listen, running for Congress during a pandemic was not ideal. And hopefully candidates won't have to deal with this next cycle. But it's something that we have to get better at if we want to win. There shouldn't be a reason that we're losing these campaigns at the very small margins.
And it also brings in the question of rich progressives. There aren't there are far more Coke Industries senior vice presidents that are giving extraordinary sums to Republicans than there are kind of rich progressives out there, but there aren't zero. And I've always thought that if you could organize 50 to 100 to 500 of these rich progressives who, because our capitalist economy is such a lottery, that means that occasionally some decent people are just going to stumble into serious amounts of wealth, and they want to spend that money, kind of dismantling the lottery-like system that benefited them. It's counterintuitive, but those people do exist, and so if you could find and organize them, it would only take 30 people maxing out to a Nabilah Islam very early, and boom, she's got $80,000 sitting in her treasury where she can now get off the ground. Is that the kind of thing that you've been thinking about and that you think is doable?
Yes, absolutely. I think that's doable, and that's something that we're going to be focusing on is creating a progressive donor table. There isn't a reason something like this shouldn't already exist. You just have to cultivate it. The political establishment has done it very well, and we can identify who those folks are already that have been supporting progressive candidates this cycle, the past cycle. But basically, bringing them together and helping them identify promising candidates early on, so that they can support them from day one. That's something that we'll absolutely be focusing on.
So has anything like this been done before that you're trying to model off, or is this a brand new project?
I would say that this is a newer project in the progressive space. I've seen this, Emily's List and the D Trip do it, where they will show up on day one. They'll talk to whoever and give them the tools to set them up for success. I haven't really seen it in the space, and so I didn't have anything like that when I was running for Congress, and so that's sort of the reason that I went ahead and created this organization, because I truly believe that if we give people the tools early on from day one, before they even announce, like, hey, this is where you can find a good campaign manager. These are great progressive consultants. This is how you run a call time operation, that we can help them, we can propel them to success.
Last question, and also tell people the URL. So small dollars are something that a lot of candidates want to lean on, insurgent candidates want to lean on, but it's not as simple as just putting out a message and then all of a sudden the small dollars come in. Can you talk a little bit about the mechanics of how you actually raise that money and how you're going to help teach candidates to do it?
Absolutely. So small dollar programs are very successful. You just have to know how to operate one. It usually is done through a strong email program, strong digital ads. Once people get to know who you are, they are inspired by your candidacy, your message. That's something that I feel like what we were able to do on my campaign is we had a great email program, and people were able to access our campaign very easily and learn about it. And that's how we're going to be able to, we're focusing on raising small dollars and large dollars. But we also want to help candidates on the ground be able to do that themselves as well. We'll be teaching candidates how to create sustainable digital email programs, digital programs, so that they can bring in their own small dollars. And so it's crucial that we teach candidates how to do this early on, because this is something that builds over time. And I feel like candidates will try to do this too little, too late. And the way to be successful at it is by creating it very early on. And there's no reason that these candidates can't do it. I believe in them. I know that they can do it, and we're going to be able to give them the tools in order to be successful in doing it.
Great. So Nabilah Islam, thanks for joining us, launching the Progressive List today. We'll have you back soon to talk about how the launch went and what you're looking at for next cycle. So thanks so much for joining us, and congratulations.
Thank you so much. And you can check it out at theprogressivelist.org.
Great. Thank you.